Very, very cool. So first off, thank you for taking the time to do this, man. I know you're very busy, writing copy and those sexy emails. So basically, I've been kind of giving the folks here an introduction as to who you are and how I stumbled across your work. So yeah, so long story short, I picked up Ben's email players newsletter, and right now I'm holding in my hands what's called the email players playbook, which is the startup guide that Ben sends out to anyone who signs up to the monthly newsletter. And actually, what we're going to be talking on this call is something that Ben talks about in this handbook, but you'll have the pleasure of Ben delivering the content himself in person, and that is the 13 ways to write irresistible emails. Really cool stuff that Ben is sharing this, guidebook, which I've already used in one email in our solo ad campaign, and I think we collected around $4,700, something like that. So this is really, really cool. So Ben, without any further ado, and before you start off, why don't you bring us up to speed about how you got around, writing those 60 emails, and where did you, uh, learn to do this?
Well, I spent many years doing it the wrong way, and by the wrong way, I mean the way that a lot of, probably just 95% of people do it, where I would just send out free content. I would just send out, teaching. I would try to out-content everybody. And, there was a time when that probably worked, like in the 90s, because it was a new type of a novelty email was. And it was like, wow, I can get all this cool information, and I don't have to pay for it, and, I'll buy from this guy because there wasn't a whole lot of competition. But nowadays, it's changed. You can get content anywhere, anytime you want. It's free. So you have to differentiate yourself. You can't just give away free stuff. Plus, when you give away free stuff, as you know, you kind of train people to just expect free stuff. It's kind of like if a grocery store just gave away free food every day and then suddenly started charging for it, they'd probably have riots. So, I used to do things that way. Hold on a second, Igor.
Okay, sure.
My headset got screwed up there. Anyway, so I did things the wrong way for I'm going to say 10 years, probably 7, 8 years into my career. And I was a direct response copywriter, so I was writing emails like they were direct response sales letters, which isn't really the way to do it. And we can talk about that later if you want. But so I did that for many years and got the same results that a lot of people get, which is goose eggs, basically. And then eventually I ran into some different ways of doing it. Like, for example, there's this guy named Matt Fury. He doesn't email as much as he used to, but he was really kind of a pioneer. He did things differently. His emails just kind of stood out. You had to read them. And he eventually did some teaching on it, and I took his course, and I was like, it just changed the way I looked at email. And I started using what he was teaching, but I didn't really follow it exactly the way he does it. I kind of discovered some of my own ways of doing it, and which kind of evolved into the system that I use now. But that was the foundation. It was this different type of doing it, where you're not just giving away free content all the time. You're entertaining people. You're giving information, but you're not really teaching. And that's a big difference between what I do and what a lot of other people do. I don't really give away information that is in my paid products. I'll give away information, and it will be informational, and it will be useful, and I do respect my list time. That's a big thing. But I'm not really teaching them what I'm selling them. So that's the thing. And, people hear that, and they say, well, why don't you just give it all away? Why don't you just give away free, blah, blah, blah. And I say, and my argument is you're not doing them any service whatsoever if you're just giving away free stuff. If you want to help somebody and you have something that's going to help them, you got to sell it to them so that they have some kind of investment in it of time, energy, and money so that they consume that product and apply it to their lives and solve whatever problem that your product solves. And that's not going to happen when it's free usually. People don't value free. Often it just sits there on their hard drive like gathering virtual dust. It never gets used, and they move on to the next thing until someone does sell them something. So that's basically what I do that's different than what a lot of other people do.
Right, right, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, that humans are creatures of habit, and if you condition your list to get free crap, they'll just demand more of free crap that you send them. But on the other hand, if you condition the list that you're going to be pitching them every day, and that what you're going to be pitching them is actually going to be pretty good, and you're going to do it in a very interesting way, which we're going to just talk about in just a minute here, and this is where you guys want to take notes. Then folks are really appreciative of the way you pitch, right?
Yeah, they don't. If you do it right, people don't get mad at you for it. They don't resent you for it. They look forward to it. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I mean, just the feedback I've always gotten, very few people complain because I'm not doing it. I'm not manipulating them. I'm not telling them that I'm going to give them A and I actually give them B. I mean, I'm very upfront. I'm going to sell you something every day. I'm going to try to. Not because like I'm some like greedy bastard, or whatever, although some people may disagree with that, but it's because I want to help people. I know my product can help people, and it's like I have an ethical and moral duty to get my product in as many people's hands as possible in a straightforward way where I'm not going to like bullshit somebody. I'm being very blunt and honest, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea. That's no big mystery to anyone who's been on my list. And I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm going to give it to you raw. And you can either buy or not, but I'm going to keep coming back every day. And as long as you're on my list, you're going to keep getting emails from me. If you want to leave, fine. Go ahead. Doesn't bother me one bit. And we can, by the way, if you want to talk about my opinion on unsubscribes and why I think they're good, we can talk about that. But the reality is I celebrate unsubscribes. I don't want people on my list who don't have a problem that I solve or who aren't willing to pay for it or who just aren't hot for it. Maybe they're just kind of lukewarm prospects. It doesn't make them bad people, but they're not going to do well with my, hearing from me. They're going to get sick of me. So I'd rather them leave. And this kind of gets a little off track, but by having this attitude and this philosophy, I get very, very, very few spam complaints. I get unsubscribes, but very few spam complaints because I'm not. They know I'm going to sell them every day. I tell them at the opt-in stage, you're going to hear from me every day. I'm going to pitch you something every day. I still give them good information. Like I want people to walk away from my emails and still feel like they got something out of it. I think it's important that you respect their time, that you actually treat them like people you care about. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You can't treat your list like it's a list of names to be, just to sell to. I mean, you got to actually care about your market. And when you do that and you go in with this attitude, it'll come through in all your emails and all your communication. They'll know that you're straight up. They may not like everything you say and everything you do, but they can respect the fact that you care about them and you're trying to help them. And that's going to help all your clicks, help get your emails open, help people want to buy, all of it. I mean, it all comes together just by caring about your market.
Okay, that's a very interesting position. In fact, we're not going to be discussing why unsubscribers are cool because if you still haven't really got the gist of it, it means that if people who don't want to get emails from you unsubscribe, it means they can't hit the spam button anymore. So it's a good thing that they are not on your list. But what I do want to point out to our audience here is the way you present yourself to the list. You come from a position of power and autonomy versus coming in as a desperate to sell kind of marketer, all right? So it's a very different type of vibe that you're sending out, and that is counterintuitively gets them back over to you and gets them to listen. So keeping to this subject, right? I want you to introduce our listeners to the concept of infotainment. So when you say that, I want to pitch the list, but at the same time want them to get value out of it, what exactly does that mean?
Okay, well, what it means is we live in a very, I don't know if this is the exact term I should use, but we live in a very celebrity-obsessed culture, at least in America. I can't speak for other countries, but I think it might be. I think our wicked ways are spreading, so everybody is being exposed to that kind of mentality. And so we have a very entertainment-driven society right now. Like people, it's not enough to just teach somebody something. It's got to be entertaining now, or people's like attention spans, drop off the thing. So infotainment is where you basically are merging information and entertainment, and you're not. There's a very fine line there, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. But here's kind of the analogy I like to use. I don't know if your listeners, I don't know if they're familiar with the old TV show MASH. It was a very popular show here in America for many years.
I used to
And
watch it
the guy
back
who
in Ukraine. I
started,
was blue. Yeah. It
okay,
was one of
yeah,
the few shows ever that they aired on TV back in Ukraine. So,
oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Well, okay, so kind of to backtrack just a little bit, there's this guy named, I think his name was something Hewitt. I think it was Don Hewitt. He was the creator of this show called 60 Minutes, which is kind of like an infotaining show. It's not hard news. It's kind of a mixture between entertainment and news. And it was when it first came out, it was very, very popular. It was very different compared to the hard news stuff. Well, anyway, that guy died back in like 2009 or something like that, the founder of 60 Minutes, Don Hewitt. And they were interviewing one of his best friends, the guy who played Hawkeye in MASH. I believe his name is Alan Alda. And they asked him, what made 60 Minutes so popular? Why was your friend so good at this? And Alan Alda says, well, because he gave you a hot dog that nourished you like broccoli. So think of the analogy there. The hot dog's fun to eat. It's easy to consume. It doesn't look intimidating. It doesn't look healthy, right? It's a hot dog. But it still nourished you a little bit, kind of like eating some broccoli at the same time. And that's what infotainment is. It's that information, which would be like the broccoli, but it's giving it to you in like a hot dog type format, which, that's the entertainment. So you want to kind of combine those two together. Now, this doesn't mean you have to make jokes and all that. In fact, I think some people try to take it too far. It just really means being yourself, like how you would talk to your best friend over a drink at the bar. I mean, you're probably not going to be uptight and stiff. You're probably going to make a few wisecracks. You might say something kind of funny. You might not. But the point is you might just have fun, right? That's what happens. You just want to have fun. Now, some markets, and that I don't think we have to worry about it, the listeners of this call, but some markets don't really lend themselves too much to the joke, like if it's a serious topic. But infotainment could be as simple as telling stories. Just telling a story is entertaining in itself. And not only that, but we're like human beings are like hardwired to be persuaded by stories anyway. So that's a good way to do it. You can just be yourself, be fun, be interesting. As long as you're interesting, you can't bore people. And that's really what infotainment is. You're still teaching a little bit. You're kind of telling people what to do, but not how to do it, which is informational, but it's not hard teaching. It's something that I call soft teaching. It's a softer version. You're not giving away anything in your product, for example. But you might talk about the problem that's plaguing them. For example, we're talking like BizOp and stuff, right? So let's think about that. What are people thinking about right now? Well, they're thinking about the economy. So you can talk about the economy in your emails. Give your opinion on the economy. Make fun of a politician who's trying to screw up the economy. You can do anything like that. But that kind of stuff's on their mind, so talk about it. That's informational, but you're not really giving away anything in a product, if that makes sense.
Well, let's help our listeners to get a better understanding of what infotainment is. Now, I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to a lot of Dan Kennedy material. I also subscribe to his newsletter and purchased a couple of his products, and he's very good at that. He's very good at making points and selling you on principles of success through the means of telling stories, through the means of giving examples, and being very infotaining in the way he delivers it. In fact, he has a book, I think, called How to Make Them Laugh and Take Their Money. Yeah. So that's a great book. So let us give our listeners a couple of examples. Now, there's a total of 13 ways that you recommend of doing this, and I'm not sure if we'll have the time to go through the entire 13 of them, but we'll definitely try. Okay, so let's just start from the very first one that you described here, the shock effect. All right, so could you give us a brief example of what a shock effect subject line might be?
Yeah, okay. Well, let me explain the shock effect so that people understand it, because this is kind of like a nuclear weapon in a sense. Like, you don't want to use it every day. You just want to use it when you really have to get attention, or if you think people's attentions are lagging. But basically what it is you're saying something that just shocks the hell out of people when they read it. Like, holy crap, I can't believe somebody just sent me this subject line. Like, what the hell is Igor thinking right now? Like, why would he send me this? And they may even get a little angry. Some people might get offended. Some people may just find it hilarious. It doesn't matter. Some people might pound the desk in anger. Oh, I can't believe this guy just insulted me at the subject line. But here's the thing. They have to at least open it if you get that kind of, like, the death of an email is indifference. This is a big thing for people to know. You don't ever want indifference. You want people hot or cold. You want them mad or angry, or you want them loving you. Never indifference. It's kind of like a girl, right? You're trying to date a girl. You never want her indifferent. You want her experiencing some kind of emotion about you all the time, whether it be happy or sad or whatever. I'm not saying to manipulate people, but I'm just saying you never want them indifferent. So, for example, a shock effect subject line that I used. Here's a good one. I used to use people's first names in emails. I don't collect first names anymore, so I can't do this now. But I did. I used to collect first names. So I had this subject line that I said, "Talk dirty to me," and then inserted their first name. So I would say, like, "Talk dirty to me, Igor." You know, "Talk dirty to me, Susan." You know? Like, I got to tell you, that the reaction from that email was really it. That was the first time I ever used the shock effect subject line. I just did it because I wanted to push myself. Because this is back in the days where I was scared to do this kind of stuff. And I remember, like, the interesting thing was none of the girls got mad at me, but only guys did. So I thought that was interesting. But, It got me sales, it got interest, it got me on the map.
You can't blame them.
And there was nobody indifferent. Right. No, I don't blame anybody. But, you always want to pay it off, though, right away. Like, if you're going to use one of a subject line like that, pay it off right away so that they don't have to, like, scroll through 3 paragraphs to get why you just said that. And you want to pay it off and explain it right away. So,
right.
Anyway, that would be a shock effect.
I think I got one of these by accident some time back when I sent an email that said, the subject line said, how being sexually harassed makes you a better marketer. Now, I spoke in the email. I spoke about example. Yeah. So in the email, I spoke about how going through this horrible, horrible experience makes you a stronger person because whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in business and internet marketing, you have to be strong. You have to deal with challenges, and therefore you become a better marketer and businessman as a result. Now, incidentally, I expected to get a very furious feedback back. But I didn't. I actually got a pretty good open rate. A lot of people clicked the link, and very few spam complaints, if any. So guys, don't be afraid to experiment, but don't forget to pay it off real quick. So which means that if you use a shock effect subject line, make sure to eliminate any sort of dangerous feedback and reactions right away in your open. So. Let's go to the second one on the list, which is curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity is probably if I had to get an email opened, I mean, shock effect is very powerful, don't get me wrong, but just on a day-to-day basis. Curiosity is probably the single most important, I don't know if you want to call it an emotion, whatever it is that you can wrench on in an email, and I'll give you an example why. There's this guy, he's been deceased for about 8 years now, named Igor Kheifets, who was easily one of the top, one of the best copywriters who ever lived. I mean, very few people would argue that point. Maybe even the best. I mean, at that level, it's all subjective, but he was one of the best of the best, and marketers, and just a true brilliant selling mind. And I had a chance to interview one of his. He didn't take a lot of proteges on, but this was one of his first proteges. And I had a chance to interview this guy. His name was Scott Haynes, who's one of the best copywriters in the game today. I just actually met him in person a couple months ago, actually. Very cool guy. And I had a chance to interview him. He told the story about how Gary brought him on his boat one day. Because Gary Kheifets, I guess, had this thing where when he was looking for ideas for his ads or whatever, he would just go on his boat and drive around. That's how he got his ideas. So he took Scott in the boat one day. They lived down in Florida, so it's on the ocean and all that. And he asked Scott, he goes, "So, Scott, what do you think the most important appeal is? What's most important in your advertising? What's the most important thing you can appeal to?" And Scott says, "That's interesting. It's self-interest." And Gary says, "No, you're wrong. It's curiosity. Curiosity is far more important even than self-interest, because curiosity will make somebody buy something they don't even want or need, just because they're so curious, because they read something in an ad, in a bullet point on page 7 of a long sales letter. One bullet point just made them, okay, I have to get this book to see what it is." One example that Gary did I think he was selling. In fact, this is kind of asked for your listeners here. He was selling for Entrepreneur Magazine, like a how to start a business type product, and he put one bullet in there that apparently had the phones ringing off the hook for this product. And I can't remember the exact bullet, but basically it said fake cocaine. It's called fake cocaine, and then he had some explanation. That was the bullet point.
How did he make it related to the business? I mean,
I don't remember how he did. It was, I'd have to remember the exact bullet point, but it tied in. You know, it was in an ad and everything. But it was this fake cocaine thing that just, I don't know if everybody was coke heads back then or what, but everybody wanted that product because of that like one bullet point. Even people who didn't even normally want to buy that kind of stuff. So that's how powerful curiosity can be. Now apply that to email subject lines. If you say something that's like they have to like, what the hell is Igor talking about here? I got to open this. You're like so far ahead of the game. You're going to be the only one who gets read in the inbox. And I got, you know, one of the examples I like to use, because this is an example that got me a joint venture with somebody, and just I got to meet someone I always wanted to meet, a guy named Dr. Glenn Livingston, who's pretty hardcore marketer. I always wanted to meet this guy. I didn't even know he was on my list. But one day I sent out an email that said something like, I don't know if it was, it's disturbing things I do on the phone. That was the subject line. While everybody else was getting last chance and how to this and all that, I said, disturbing things I do on the phone. And it was about how at the time, and this was like a few years ago, whenever I was doing calls like this, and I'm not doing this now, so don't worry, but I have a couple handguns, and I used to just kind of hold it and play with it, not loaded, of course, when I was on the phone, and that was what the email was about. And he goes, you know, Ben, I had to contact you. Like, I had to open this email for one thing. You know, but that's the kind of response you want. I have to open this email to see what he's talking about. You know, the disease I might have was another one. I think some of these are in the email player's playbook, actually. The disease I might have. You know, well, if somebody that you're following
both of them are. Yep.
You kind of have to read it. You know, you have to. Well, what disease? What the hell? You know, it's a curiosity thing, and you know, you can also do this about, and ideally you want to do this about the market, like what's on their mind. For example, let's say that you sell to political conservatives. Let's say you're a hardcore Republican in America, right? And everyone on your list knows that.
Ben,
and you put a
let me stop you real quick, please, because we do have an international audience, and not everybody will be able to get this example because, you know, politics in America is pretty complicated, and I don't get it myself. Perhaps we could stick to a bit more, you know, mainstream type of example.
I can't. This is mainstream. What I'm about to say. It doesn't matter if you even know what these words mean.
I don't even know what a Republican is.
Yeah. All right. Don't worry about that. But this example is very, very apt. So I'm going to use it because you need to hear this. All right. Let's say you're just politically on one side of the spectrum. Okay, whatever it is, and your list knows this. Now you come out in an email subject line. And you say, well, here's why I'm voting for this other guy who's the exact opposite of what you would normally vote for. They're going to have to open that email if they know what your politics are. And I think you should, by the way, in your emails, don't be afraid to talk about your politics because that's infotaining. And that's going to polarize people, and it's going to get people either really on your side or they're going to be mad at you or whatever. But believe me, you'll get a lot of buyers that way and a lot of clicks because, you know, you're being straight with people. But the point is, that's what you want to do. You want to get people curious.
Okay, fair enough. You got another one here in the email player's playbook that says ex-gurus in orange jumpsuits. What was that email about?
That was about, well, that was a long time ago. I think I was launching a book for that or some kind of product for that. And
but what it basically implies is that gurus go to jail.
Yeah, it was something like that. I mean, you know, because that's what inmates wear around here. At least they're in these orange jumpsuits. At least, you know, it could be any color, but it doesn't really matter. The fact, why would these gurus be wearing a jumpsuit at all? You know, what is that about? And it's a curiosity thing. You know, that's the kind of stuff that you just, it's weird, but you throw it out there. It doesn't even promise to tell them anything. It's just a curiosity.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. So let us go ahead and move on to number 3, which I don't feel we need to spend much time on. It's basically a straight benefit. So stuff like, you know, how to make 10K in 30 days and, how to get your list opening, clicking, and and buying from your emails, which is what I use to get people onto this webinar. So
Yeah.
I don't feel we need just spend too much time on this one. So let's just then go ahead and skip all the way to number 4, which is pretty cool, and you call it bizarre.
Yes. The bizarre subject line taps into this thing where in popular culture, and I know this is an international audience, so I'm just going by like around here, and maybe it's the same everywhere, but you see this kind of obsession with the bizarre more and more. It started with like the National Enquirer and Weekly World News, those types of magazines, always sold very, very well. Now they've gotten into financial trouble since the old days, but basically people are kind of into that. That's why if you go to, at least around here, if you go to the grocery store checkout line, you still see these like weird, headlines about aliens visiting and Bigfoot and all this stuff. Like, this is weird stuff. So the bizarre. So what I like to do is I like to tap into that. So for example, one of the probably the most popular emails I've ever written, I've reused it many times, is called Phantom Pooping Prospects. That's the subject line. And you read that, okay, there's some curiosity element to that, but this phantom thing, like, what the hell? I mean, is this about a ghost? I mean, you don't know. And it gets attention. Now, the email is paid off very quickly in that one. But the point is you want to tap into the bizarre. If there's a popular TV show or movie that deals with bizarre themes, and, that's actually one of the subject lines I talk about is using movie titles and all that, but all these things kind of overlap with each other sometimes. You can use it. You can talk about weird and bizarre stuff. It's just so out of left field. There was another one that I wrote called Gurus Prancing Around the Bohemian Grove, which, you read that and you're like, what the hell? The Bohemian Grove is like this weird, like, meeting place, like secret societies meet and stuff over here in California. And so, it's bizarre. It's weird. It gets attention. It gets open. Think about this. Whatever's in the inbox of your prospect, right? They're probably getting a lot of the same old, how to this, how to that, just 2 days left, better hurry, these like really lame subject lines that are outplayed now. And then you have something like Gurus Prancing Around the Bohemian Grove. I mean, it has to get like this so weird, it stands out. And the thing that stands out is the thing that's most likely to get opened and clicked and hopefully bought from.
Now, the one thing I would love for you to invest a minute in and educate us about is exactly how do you pay off something like phantom pooping, whatever. Or, you also wrote that bizarre email where you were talking about phantom phone vibrations. Like all of a sudden you feel like the phone vibrates. Yeah, exactly. So, just could you give us an example of how do you go and pay off a weird subject line like that? Because I sincerely hope that most people have this, but some people don't have this creativity. So just, to get someone rolling with this, how would you pay off a subject line like that?
Okay, well, these subject lines were created out of the theme of the email first. I didn't create the subject lines first. Some people like to do that. They'll write the subject line first and then figure out how to pay it off. That takes too long for me. So I pull the subject line out of the subject matter of the email itself. So Phantom Pooping Prospects was just about my dog. I live in an area that's very rainy, rains all the time here, and my dog likes to go outside and pace around in the rain while I'm sitting there freezing my butt off, pace around. She gets in the position like she's going to go number 2, but she doesn't. She just acts like she's going to go, and then she stops, walks around, and sniffs some more. I'm out in the rain, and I call that phantom pooping, like she didn't really go. And, then I compared that to that's how a lot of buyers are. That's how I am when I'm buying. I act like I'm going to buy, and then I decide not to, and then I go buy from somewhere else in another spot. So that came out of that. That came out of the subject matter itself. And that's how you pay it off is by I write the emails first, usually before the subject line. Sometimes the subject line's there first, but usually you can pull a subject line out of your copy in your email. And if you, if you just let yourself, you just let your mind wander and be creative, you'll be amazed at what comes up, and you'll be like, holy crap, that was, you didn't even know you could be that creative. The more you do this, the easier it gets. That's all I can tell you. It's like emails beget emails, and some people might think they don't have this kind of creativity, but everybody does. You just haven't been exercising it. Once you start writing emails regularly, your creativity is going to go off the chart. I guarantee it.
All right, very cool. And I really want to kind of stop here and put a big, stick a big red flag into the ground to make sure that our listeners really, really, pay attention to what you just said. Write the email first and figure out your subject lines later. Especially if you're, mailing your list more than once, right? So you have to create, additional subject lines for unopens and those who didn't click, which is something we discuss in my coaching program, something that I've shared in multiple other releases. And so just like Ben just said, and you should listen to the guy. He has years, if not decades, of writing experience. Write your emails first and subject line second, which makes your subject line writing even easier. But I guess would you say, Ben, that sometimes you start off thinking you write an email around a certain theme, but then you end up switching it around and right in the middle of writing it?
That happens a lot. Or, what could happen, what happens a lot to me, I don't know if this happens to everybody, but I'll be writing an email and I'll get an idea for another email and I'll have to stop the email I'm writing on to get the other idea out really fast. This just happened to me last Sunday when I was writing all my emails for this week. Because I like to write mine in batches usually for the week. I don't always do it that way, but sometimes I do. And when that happens, it's kind of like you just wrote 2 emails in less time than it would normally take you to write because you're just on that creative flow. I mean, stuff will just start coming out of your brain that you didn't know was there. Your subconscious is holding all the memories, thoughts, feelings, experiences, everything that's come to your 5 senses since the day you were born is being stored in your subconscious. You are going to be amazed at what's in there. Every movie you've seen, every TV show you've seen, every lecture you've listened to, every book you've read, every website you've surfed, it's all stored in there. And now your conscious mind only has like 7 memory bytes, so it can only focus on like one thing. That's whatever you're writing. But when you let go, when you're not really trying to like concentrate too hard, not trying to be creative, your subconscious just starts feeding you stuff that you need at that time. And this sounds really weird and kind of woo-woo probably, but it absolutely works that way. And that's why writing emails is so fun because it's almost like therapeutic. Once you get into this and you start doing it, it's like therapy. It's like therapy, man. You got you're dealing with emotions and thoughts that you didn't even know you had, and you're getting it out there on the page, and people love it reading it, and a lot of people like buying from it. So there's a lot more to this than just like selling. I mean, there's all kinds of other things going on that makes it so I have to do this every day, Igor. I don't, the more I do this, the more I have to do it, and I think your readers or listeners will have the same experience.
I agree. At some point, I've been in the solo business for about way over 3 years, I think, and I've been writing emails every day. And so at some point, my wife just flat out asked me. I mean, she says, "How do you know what to write about? Where do you get ideas?" And we usually get ideas, at least guys like you and me. That seems to be the case, and you shared about it in your newsletter as well. This month that I've got just a few days ago. We just write about what happens to us. I mean, the dog pooping phantom thing. It's just your dog that tries to poop doesn't really, poop. And, I wrote a bunch of emails about, the coffee shop that I work at. And actually, I'm doing this webinar out of a coffee shop. So I wrote a couple of, emails themed about that. One about the owner demanding, to know what I do and, really harassing me about teaching him. The other is about a waitress. Same thing, same, theme, but a waitress that almost, decided to quit her day job and so I can teach her until I told her what my outrageous mentoring fee is, and she decided not to. And, a bunch of different stories like that. So everything that revolves around you. And if you think that you live a pretty boring life, and you're probably right because we all live boring lives, every now and again something happens to you. If nothing happens to you, go read a newspaper. Immediately you got like a gazillion things you could write about. I mean, if you're a car enthusiast, you can theme it around cars. If you're a gamer, if you are a fitness junkie like James Canzanella, who's on this call, or if you're like an avid financial kind of guru type of guy like David, who's on this call as well. I mean, you can write about literally anything, and you can almost create these parallel thoughts, like the parallel ideas, to illustrate your points and transfer those immediately into the marketing and the biz ops space, right?
Absolutely, dude. And you hit on like some really good points there where you're right. There's nothing wrong with talking about the things you're passionate about and then relating it to whatever it is you're selling. Example, I write in like I write stuff for the golf niche, for the dating niche. I've written stuff for biz op niche. You know, I've done a lot of different niches, let's put it that way. And I'm always bringing in examples from other niches to make a point for this, like when I'm talking about whatever email I'm using. Example, just yesterday I wrote a batch of emails for the dating niche. And I used something that I learned in the business niche from this like negotiator. This guy named Jim Camp was like the greatest, most feared negotiator on the planet. That's his billing, what he calls himself. And I was able to take something I learned from the business-to-business niche and apply it to the people in the dating niche so that they would understand the analogy I was trying to use. Because I'm very comfortable talking about business-to-business. So yeah, like if someone's into fitness and you're writing to the biz-op niche, you can use fitness examples all day long, like how the body works and how muscles work and all that stuff, whatever it is you know. I mean, gosh, I'm just thinking about that out loud right now. I'm thinking, you know, sweating releases poisons, you know, working out releases poisons. I mean, you could actually, and toxins, you could actually apply that to BizOp. You know, how a muscle breaks down and then has to like build itself up to get stronger. I guarantee you that could be applied to BizOp. And people understand those kind of analogies. So I talk about comic books a lot because I used to love comic books. I mean, people get it. And anything that makes you a better communicator is going to help you with email. So talk about what you know. Absolutely.
Here's another question, Ben, that I'm getting from one of the folks in the audience, and I'm actually very curious about it myself because, you know, the guy who is asking is not a native English speaker, and I myself was born and raised in Ukraine, moved to Israel when I was 12, so a language was a barrier, you know, and the way I sound now is definitely not the way I used to sound 2 years ago. So what would you say to somebody who will tell you that English is not their best, you know, they just don't know how to talk English very well. They can write a little bit, but not too much, and so they're afraid. I'm sorry, someone's phone is ringing on the other table. So you know, someone who's not a native English speaker is afraid of not being good enough or not mastering the language on a high enough level in order to write sexy emails.
Well, you know what? I don't think that's even a problem. I think that could be turned into a strength. There is something to be said for the first of all, you want to have a personality that people are following, not following. Like, I can't spell or pronounce anything. I'm the first to admit it. I have a podcast, dude. I'm the first to say I cannot pronounce jack. I mean, I suck at pronouncing. You know, it probably is butchering words even on this call, okay? Let's say you're not, you know, a native English speaker, but you're writing to English-speaking people. You know what? You just be the guy who makes no apology for that. You say, look, I know that I don't always get all the words right, and I'm still struggling with learning English, and you make that a part of your emails. You know, the learning process that you're going through to learn English and write emails every day can be applied to the BizOp niche easily. People who are starting their own business or trying to get into a BizOp, they're going to go through the same struggle. It's going to be like the guy who can't speak English very well, but he's learning, and he's going to get better, and the more he does it, the better it gets, and he might butcher some words here and there, but he's ultimately going to make it. And that would be a good email for someone who doesn't speak English really well. Come out and say that in your very first email. Whether you're using an autoresponder or you're sending broadcasts, I do broadcasts, but I still have one autoresponder email to kind of welcome people. I would come right out in that welcome email and say, look, first things first. I am not the best, you know, English language speaker. Like, I can't, you know, I'm learning this language. So some of my emails may sound a little different. But I'm getting better, and as I progress, you're going to see that. But don't let that stop you, because the information I have for you is so good that even people who can't understand what I'm saying still find it very valuable and interesting, and they love it. You know, just use it to your advantage. Spin it. What we call that is making the skeleton dance. Now, this is a concept by this guy, sales trainer named Barry Maher, and he used this concept called make the skeleton dance, which is you take your flaw, whether it's your product's flaw or in this case a flaw with the way you speak English, and you spin it into a reason why they should read your emails. And, you know, you do that, and you're going to stand out probably better than a lot of other people who do speak perfect English. And so not only that, but I'll tell you what, man, and this is something for everyone to know, okay? Whatever slang is in your native language, use it in your emails when you're, trust me. People love reading foreign slang. Like, my favorite, I love reading Australian email, people from Australia, because they have such cool metaphors and stuff that we just don't have over here in America. And whatever country you're in, I guarantee you have slang and interesting figures of speech that even if an English-speaking person doesn't get it, they will understand it in the context of however you use it in your email. So it stands out. It's one of those things that stands out. And even if they don't quite get whatever that metaphor was, in an email you can get away with this kind of stuff. You couldn't like a direct response sales letter, but in emails you can definitely get away with that. And you might find that people start using your phrases, stuff like that, when writing you back because people like it. So, don't try to hide the fact that you don't speak English very well. Use it to help get people to want to read you more and sell your stuff. I would use it. I almost wish I didn't speak English. I think it's a strength, actually.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a weakness on your part. So, I'm very happy you mentioned this because so many people are always letting this sort of, bullshit get in the way. They will tell you I'm not technical, or I don't speak English very well, or, I have a very small penis, or, anything that really comes to their mind that should supposedly, stop them from achieving a goal. And I find it to be a bunch of bullcrap. And, by the way, I do completely agree on the Australian slang thing, with the tits on the bowl and that sort of stuff. And I got an Australian client as well, and he's just, using, whenever he uses one, I'm just, I'm very happy. So this whole making skeleton dance, which is a very interesting way to put it, is something I've used early on in my career when I didn't have much credibility to me, and I wanted, to get people to buy my stuff. When they would put up an objection, I would usually try to spin it to make it into advantage. So, like, they would say, well, why should I buy from you and not from somebody like Frank Kern, who's pretty big and popular and is obviously an authority? Well, I would say something like, well, Frank Kern is too busy to even pay attention to you, and I can give you some personal support. Bam, I just turned my own, right? So I just turned my own flaw into an advantage. So if you just, spend some time on thinking this stuff through, usually you can profit from. Now, the next one is number 5, is play in popular quotes and phrases. Again, I don't feel that we need to spend much time on this. I'll just give you guys a quick read off of the Email Player's Playbook with some examples, just to give you the gist of it. So there's one here that says, revenge is a dish best served sold, which is obviously a play upon revenge is a dish best served cold. Another one that I really liked is they can kiss my ads, which is, a play off they can kiss my ass. And the one thing I would love to ask you, Ben, is to kind of elaborate a bit on how do you spin this, how would you pay off they can kiss my ass?
That email was talking about how a lot of ads are very, like, people try to make writing sales letters very complicated with all these moving parts. And I use the golf analogy about how, the way I see it at least, the best golf swing is one that has the least amount of, like, angles. Like, the least complicated swing is probably the best swing. And so I was breaking down writing a sales letter into 5 parts. You see people out there like 38-point checklists for their sales letters. That's just so complicated. Nobody's going to follow that stuff. I mean, if they do, they've got monster attention spans. So I was keeping it down to like that. And, I was talking about how ads are basically very complicated. I don't remember exactly how I worked Kiss My Ads into it, because that was like back in 2009 when I wrote that. But that was basically the gist of it. And, that was paid off just by the fact that I was making fun of other ads. There's another word I've been wanting to use, and I haven't used it yet, call someone an ad hole instead of an asshole. And I haven't figured out a use for it yet. But that's the kind of way you just start thinking in these terms. Like, take popular phrases and quotes and things that are just in the culture and try to, like, substitute different words in there and just see what happens. And that's infotaining, by the way.
Very, very cool.
Just reading that is entertaining.
That's
gets attention.
Indeed. That's indeed infotaining. You should write this down, folks. Infotaining. Okay, well, let me ask you this, Ben. Obviously some of these subject lines are dating back to 2010, 2009. Probably some of them are from the 90s, And so does that mean that what we're, basically going over here is it timeless? Do you still use this sort of approach? Do you recycle any of these emails today?
All the time. In fact, sometimes, even I sometimes get stuck for ideas and burned out and just can't think of anything to write. And when that happens, because I've written so many emails, I'll go back exactly a year, give or take a week or two, in my autoresponder or my broadcasting, because you can look at all your past emails. And I'll go back a year and just pick one out that looks cool. So I've reused all these, and I still do. And I use them in other, like, related niches sometimes. They're to different lists. They're very timeless. I mean, a subject, anything that's going to get someone's attention is timeless. Now, you may have to tweak some words around here and there if it's really old. I mean, none of these are from the 90s. These are all from like 2009 and forward. Some of them are more recent than others, but I only put examples in there that I remember actually got people to buy. So that was important. That's important to note. And you just want to get attention. So all these things, I mean, I could use these 50 years from now and it probably still work.
Okay, that's great. And the reason I've mentioned this is because one of the biggest things in our marketplace is going after the latest and the greatest, shiny thing. So when it's a new release, people supposedly think it's it's better or it's reinventing the wheel. So I just wanted to illustrate a point here, showing you guys that you don't have to be reinventing the wheel first off, and whatever the strategies you're using, the ones that really, really, really work are timeless. They will be just as effective 20 years from today because they operate based off of human psychology, not so much of the latest, Facebook algorithm or, the Google change, which is, exactly why I love copywriting so much. It hasn't really changed since 50 years ago. And, while the consumer got a bit more advanced, you can always break patterns and you can always get them, by surprise and just appeal to those basic human buttons, right? That when you push it, almost always you have the person responding to, which is really, really cool. So moving on to number 6, and it's probably one of my favorites. I'm not sure if it's something I love more than the next one, number 7, which we're going to be talking about in just a second, but definitely one of the most usable for me, because I'm able to find out these ideas very, very quickly. We're talking about contrast. All right, so we're talking about contrasting ideas. And this is very powerful because what usually happens when you use a contrasting idea, you surprise the prospect because it's kind of unexpected. So today, mailing for this webinar, I actually used a subject line that said how to sell to your list without getting tons of spam complaints. And usually the paradigm people have is, if I sell something to my list, if I pitch something to my list, I get unsubscribes and spam complaints. So, it's probably one of the most profitable techniques to describe in the entire playbook, and I would just love for you to give us a few examples on exactly how to use it in the biz market.
Okay. Well, let me just say that contrast is extremely powerful, and because it gets attention. And by the way, it's not just for emails. Contrast in design, like you want like black and white is very easy to read. So contrast can be good in the way you have your paragraphs and sentences, like different lengths and sizes. Like, some people like to have like just one line for every email. They're kind of missing the point how that works. Have a big thick paragraph of 4 or 5 sentences followed by like a small paragraph of like 3 words, and just kind of makes it easier on the eye to read. So contrast can be applied to a lot of things. But as far as contrasting ideas, man, you can just go to town on this kind of stuff. I mean, I remember I did one called something about how to get more sales by offering less value. That was, that's totally contrasting.
How to nab more sales by offering less value. Nab, I don't know what nab is.
That's right. Well, that's, that's an American word, and it gets attention. Like, what does nab mean? It has a curiosity.
Yeah.
So it does. And you want how to get less spam. Here's another one. I don't know if I'm going to cite this exactly, but how to get less spam complaints by writing more emails. I absolutely wrote that, and it's absolutely easy to pay that off because I don't even. If I get 1 spam complaint a week, that's a lot. I barely ever get spam complaints, and I'm sending out sometimes 2 emails a day. So I was able to make a case for that. But that's high contrast, right? People think, well, shoot, wouldn't the more emails I send give me more spam? The fact is, the less emails you send, the more spam complaints you're going to get because they're not hearing from you, and they go, who's this guy? I don't even know who this person is. I'm going to push the spam. It must be spam. But if they're hearing from you every day or at least regularly, even if you're not doing it daily, you're rarely ever going to get a spam complaint. And if you do, it's because you said something that hurt someone's feelings or something. You said something like pissed them off or whatever, and I'm going to push the spam button. It's very rare. Most people just click the unsubscribe one. But there you go. I mean, that's a perfect example of using contrast in the subject line, how to get less spam complaints by sending more email. It's just a contrasting idea. And there's lots of ways to do this.
All right.
I think I did one like an eye doctor blinded by bad marketing or something. I don't know. anytime I can think of contrast, I use it.
Yeah, and the idea is pretty straightforward. That's probably why I loved it so much, because many of these concepts, it took me a couple of times reading them before I really got them. But the contrast really, it just fell into place for me. And the first time I read it, the next day I contacted my business partner. I said, let's mail this promotion. And so what we mailed was a contrasting idea about traffic, and that most people have this same old traffic that they push from one list to the next, kind of like the JV group, where they promote each other's launches, so it's the same people buying from the same gurus all the time. And here's new traffic that you got. So this was a contrasting idea, the way we spawned it. I don't quite remember the subject line, but the point of it was that it contrasted the entire, like you said, black and white, right? So you put two things that contrasting into a single email, and usually you get that response you're looking for. Again, guys, you'll have to get a bit more creative here, but it does get easier by the minute when you start practicing. So as you do it every day, and we do recommend mailing your list every day, you will notice how much easier it gets. So moving on to number 7, and again, I still haven't really decided which one of these is my favorite one, but number 7 is playing on book and movie titles. And quite recently, I actually wrote a big post to my coaching clients in the mastermind about comparing people who are trying to make money from home to characters of a show, the Game of Thrones, which I kind of got hooked up on recently. So that seemed to have generated big response, especially from the folks who watched the show. So could you perhaps walk us through how do you connect the dots here, and which shows do you tap for ideas? Is there a better show? What's sitcom versus drama versus soap, stuff like that.
Well, I use them all, and anything that kind of lands in my mind. You just mentioned Game of Thrones, which kind of made me chuckle because I've never actually, I've only watched one episode of it, but I had this idea for a subject line for the dating niche. Because in the dating niche, and at least the part of the niche I'm selling to, is I'm trying to show guys how to find high quality women and not the slutty women. So I thought of Game of Hoes. That's a subject line. I haven't used it yet because I haven't seen the show enough to relate it. But that's an idea. I mean, that was one idea that popped in there. I think there's this book called Conversations with God. So I remember hearing that and saying, copywriting Conversations with God. There was a soap opera here in the United States called The Young and the Restless. So I remember writing a subject line called Young and the Testless. And I was talking about testing emails and all that. So it just kind of falls in there. You were mentioning creativity, and I'm sensing that people are having a hard time with the whole creativity part because it's really not something that gets taught a lot, right? We're almost taught to not be creative, just swipe and paste and all that stuff. But I can tell you right now, you want to train your brain to be creative. No matter what you're doing in business, it's going to make you a better business person overall, having a creative muscle when you flex it and you work it out. You said there's somebody in the workout niche that's listening to this. It's like any other muscle. You want to use it. Don't let it go dormant. Don't not use it. Be like never using your legs and then thinking you're going to go run a marathon. Flex that creative muscle. We're going through all these subject lines. These are designed to make you stronger creatively. So it may be a little hard at first. I mean, I admit it's like any kind of exercise. It might hurt a little bit the next day, right? It might be a little sore. You might have to ice your brain down a little bit, figuratively speaking. But it's going to make you better at not only emails, but anything. Anything you do in business, the more creative you are, the better. So don't try to not be creative. Don't try to look for ways where you don't have to be creative. Embrace it. Accept the challenge and run with it because it's only going to make you more money. Now that's a little bit of a tangent, but I just seemed like I should bring that up.
Yeah, you tied it in just right. You paid it off just right. So let us go ahead and move on to number 8. And this is a bit of a spin-off on number 7. Because what you're saying here is basically we can spin off TV and movie characters. So not necessarily the title, right, but the character of certain TV shows and movies.
Absolutely. Whenever I can think of ways to do this, and it's good to make sure that these are shows that your market is watching or is at least aware of. I normally wouldn't do this with some obscure show that nobody knows about. You want to talk about things that are in people's mind. It's that whole conversation around the water cooler mentality. What are people talking about around the water cooler at their job? That's really the basis for all these subject lines. Like, what are they talking? What movies are they talking about? What TV shows are they talking about? I mentioned MASH earlier, and I was amazed that was actually shown in the Ukraine, so that's pretty interesting. But again, that's a universal show. You could talk about a character in MASH if you want. Even though it's kind of an older show and everything, but if you're writing to an older audience who knows about it, use it. But yeah, I do it all the time. I think one of my favorite ones was I talked about Fonzie from Happy Days, like how Fonzie fights the gurus or rumbles. No, rumbles with the gurus, because rumbles is like an old 1950s slang for fighting, basically. And most people today, even America, probably don't even know what that means, but I use it anyway because it adds to the curiosity factor and the fun factor and the infotainment factor. And Fonzie's in our culture over here, so everyone knows who it is. So I used his name in one. Mr. Furley from this show called Three's Company. Anyone who's familiar with that show is going to wonder. He was a bumbling landlord who, couldn't do anything right, but he had sales secrets, and it adds to that curiosity angle. Heisenberg, Walter White from Breaking Bad. I mean, I've used that name lots of times. So you can run with this stuff. Just any show that's
that
in
myself. Yeah, I used Walter White.
Oh, okay.
And I posted onto Facebook. I got like a gazillion likes and gazillion comments, and multiple people sharing this stuff. And I was really amazed because I really wrote from the heart, because I've just finished watching the show, and I was literally shocked, and just the audacity and the balls-on approach that Walter took into changing his life from being a miserable loser, right, to becoming a drug lord, the biggest drug lord the Southwest America has ever seen. So it really left an imprint, and I decided to just use it as a theme. And I didn't quite expect it, but people just the response was explosive. So it definitely does work. I can testify to that.
That's interesting. Just what you said there, the Heisenberg story from being like an underachieving loser, which like every person feels like these days, right? Who works in corporate America, everyone feels like they're underpaid and undervalued, and they're just underachievers. And you know what? In the BizOp niche, man, that is the perfect email theme. Like talking about that, how you might be an underachiever, but look what Walter White did. Why can't you do the same thing in your business and career? Why can't you do that and inspire them? I don't know if this is one of my subject lines or not, but I definitely, one of the emails I talk about writing is inspirational emails. And if you're talking about financial themes, you can inspire your list all day long to open your emails, click links, and buy whatever you're selling, because people are looking to be inspired. You want to get them psyched up. You want to get them excited. And by inspiring them, by telling stories like that, you're going to do that. You're going to make them realize they're better than what they think they are, and that they can do great things. And in the BizOp market, my gosh, man, if they need anything, it's inspiration that they can do it.
All right, yeah, and I agree. It's a pretty desperate market. Probably one of the reasons why it's also a very profitable market, but it's really, it's full of people who are desperate for a change, and inspiring them to action is inevitable, just a crucial element of the entire process. So before we move on to number 9, I just want to quickly recap on everything we've discussed so far. So we talked about the shock emails, where you shock the hell out of your reader by saying something, that's out of the ordinary. You have a great subject line that, you've listed here, why I pee on my sales letters. So we will not really ruin the curiosity effect of it for our listeners. Maybe they want to find it on your blog at benso.com/blog, but definitely a shocker. Then we've spoken about curiosity that ties into many different elements, and probably one of the most powerful drivers to open up an email, according to Gary Halbert. Number 3 was straight benefit. Again, we didn't spend much time on it because it's pretty much self-explanatory. You just have to know your market. Number 4 was bizarre emails, and they're not too far off from the shock effect emails, but I guess they're a bit more moderate. And again, ties into curiosity in a big way. Number 5, we discussed playing on popular quotes and phrases. Again, pretty self-explanatory. Just got to go and find those phrases and quotes, probably by Googling them. Very easy stuff. Number 6 was contrast. So you got to think black and white. Two things that don't go hand in hand, and you kind of tie them in together to create unexpected, email theme. Number 7 was playing on book and movie titles, and number 8 was TV and movie characters. So where you have to go deeper into a mainstream character of a movie or a TV show. But again, you have to remember exactly who you're writing to, because if you choose the wrong character that nobody knows, you're risking to run into some trouble. Like if I were writing into my marketplace at this point, I'll probably talk about Friends or Seinfeld, right? You know, those mainstream shows, but not so much about MASH. Probably not. You know, I don't think my market is that, you know, wise. So by wise, I mean old, of course. So let's move on to number 9. And number 9 is very interesting. I notice you do this a lot in your emails. In fact, you do it at least once every 10 days. And it's basically challenging existing dogmas, which means that you take an idea that's a common knowledge, right? That's a common knowledge in your marketplace, and you just challenge it. You just say it's not true.
Yeah. You know what? And this is easy to do in almost every market, because let's face it, if the mainstream information in any given market was true, people wouldn't be struggling so much. They wouldn't need to buy products, right? So there's a lot of misinformation all over the place. And I use this all the time. In fact, I even use it for like when I create information products titles sometimes. I once wrote a book called Why You Should Never Give Your Dog a Bone. I mean, everyone knows you give a dog a bone. And that was like an actual title. It went beyond just emails and subject lines. It was like I can use it in other things. It's that whole, and this really overlaps with contrast in a lot of ways. But it gets attention. Like you have to know. Anytime somebody has their personality and beliefs wrapped up in something and you tell them it's not true, neurologically they have a very hard, they're going to dismiss it completely offhand, and those are usually not your best buyers because they're not really thinkers. You want people who think to be buyers. Whenever you do that, they kind of have to take a look at it. Recently, just like last weekend, I had a podcast, and on the podcast I talked about this guy who made a case for why anorexia, the condition, is actually not really that big of a deal, like statistically, compared to obesity, basically. So I wrote a subject line, like, I don't know if I used this in the subject line or not, but the case for anorexia. Like, what the, you know, you read that, you're like, what the hell is wrong with that? But you have to read it. You have to see what's going on. So, yeah, whenever you can think of stuff like this, do it. I'm trying to think for like the biz op world, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, you could probably do this all day long, you know. Like why you don't need a lot of money to start a business.
Yeah, exactly. I actually used it in one of my sales letters. I was talking about how most businesses, like franchises, restaurants, and anything else, require you require to get, you know, huge startup capital. But in information marketing and business opportunity market, you know, you can settle for little money and tons of ambition. And which is incidentally true because I started out my business with about $10 in my pocket. You know, I funded along the way. You know, I got a second job to get a little bit more money. But initially, I got into it with just $10 in my pocket. I didn't even have a job. So I completely agree. In fact, this is the principle that I use to pocket, you know, an extra $4,700 this month that I mentioned earlier when, you know, giving you a sexy intro. You know, I used a subject line that said why solo ads don't work, and I mailed it to a list of people who bought solo ads from me. Now, you can imagine that I'm, right? So I'm a guy, you know, here's this guy who's supposedly all about solo ads, makes his living, you know, a big chunk of his living off of solo ads, and all of a sudden he mails you and he says, hey, man, you know, hey, Ben, solo ads don't work. You know, so you have to open the email. I think we achieved about 40% open rate in that email. So out of the about 700 people who got it, we had 200 something open the email, and we had over 100 people responding to the offer. Not everybody purchased, of course, but many of them did, and they paid high tickets. So definitely a great email, definitely a great concept, and very, very powerful to get people off their butts and, you know, into gear to give you some money. Now, so that was number 9. Number 10 is something that you hear a lot of copywriters talk all the time. So, Ben, I really don't give you much credit for it. It's numbers, right? So,
yeah.
You know,
well,
not,
like
not
a lot of this stuff is not necessarily. A lot of this stuff is not necessarily original. I'm just teaching it in a hopefully a unique way that helps people use it. You know what I mean? I mean, I didn't make up curiosity either. You know, but I'm damn well going to teach it.
No way, man! I thought you did.
I know, right? I thought you made up curiosity, Ben. You didn't make up numbers? What? But yeah, I don't want to like make it sound like I'm invented any of this stuff. I'm simply taking what I've learned and enhancing it, I hope. That's for
Which
others
is
to
another
decide.
big lesson on and of itself, because a lot of people think, we got a lot of beginners listening to this call, and many of them think that you have to be an expert of some sort, you have to be a credible guru before you can create your first product. Well, we've just discovered that, 90% of what we're teaching in this webinar is something that Ben didn't even create. So, he's a big scam and he's making money, so why couldn't you, right? So really, it should never stop you that you don't know something. You can always learn something, which is mostly is the case, right? You don't, very few people learn something by trial and error, right? Very few people discover something amazingly new, uh, and they just teach you something they learn from other people, their mentors. A lot of what I'm teaching, in my coaching program is actually something I picked up from my mentor, and he taught me something he picked up from a different guy. So it's really not that big of a deal, guys, and you shouldn't be so uptight and anal about the fact that you're not an expert at this point. If you still haven't released your own information product, you really, it's about time you do, because you'll notice that it makes you more money than not having one on the marketplace. Right, Ben?
Not only that, but if you're really like fresh off the newbie truck here, there's nothing wrong with just positioning yourself as, hey, I'm a newbie, here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm using right now, and here's some results I've been getting. And all your email, by the way, this kind of brings up something I meant to talk about earlier. All emails should be born out of honesty, raw honesty. Don't put on a facade don't try to be something you're not. If you're new, embrace it, okay? Be the newbie. Be the newbie who's reporting to your list all the scams out there, and who's reporting all the things that do work and the stuff you're doing. And hey, here's what I'm doing, and here's the result I got, and here's the product I used. And if you click that link and buy that product and send me your receipt, I'll send you this other bonus. I mean, be honest. We always do things out of raw honesty. Not everybody is going to like it at first, but they'll respect you for it. And if people respect you on your list, they're far more likely to click your links and hear what you have to say.
Okay, so now let's get into numbers. So, just in a few words, in a few sentences, what exactly does that mean, and how do you go about using it?
Well, numbers are, I've heard different theories on why numbers work so well, but basically what it comes down to is it's an actual hard implied promise about something. I think one of the longest running, and this is a headline for a sales letter, but it could easily be used for an email. It was something like 32 ways for something from Good Housekeeping magazine. It was a control, and a control is like an ad that nobody can beat. Like other advertising writers try to write an ad that makes more sales than the control ad. And so something that runs for 17 years or something is a pretty good ad, because nobody can beat it. And that one ran forever. 32 reasons something, I can't remember the exact words, but it had that number in there. And they would try different numbers, and for some reason 32 always worked. So numbers just, I don't know, they stand out in the mind. 5 ways to do something, it's interesting. It's inherently interesting. It's like, okay, what are these 5 ways? Plus, and this is just my own opinion on this, I can't really say this is the reason why, but I think people like to have, I think the average person likes to have information broken down into lists. This is why they make grocery lists, and they don't write a novel. They don't write a whole page, a story about going to the grocery store. They write a list, because a list is easy to consume and digest. And if you say X number of ways to do something, that kind of implies they're going to be listed off, and I'm going to get this information fast so I can move on with the rest of my day. So I think that's another big thing. I can't say that's for sure a reason, but that's just my own personal opinion based on talking to people and using numbers, subject lines, and all that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Okay. So that's definitely something to experiment with. So, 5 ways to ruin a good sales letter, 5 ways to give Igor money, 7 ways to completely flunk a webinar. You can create different, many different subject lines off of this and many different emails. Not to mention, guys, that you don't really have to go into detail. Like if you list 3 ways to make affiliate commissions, right? You don't have to actually go and give them an ebook on each of these ways, right? You just have to list them. So the people who are reading the email say, okay, I like this one, so I'll go and Google it, and I'm going to try and find more information about it. Okay? Obviously, it helps when you tie it into whatever you're about to promote in the email, so make sure it ties into you. Okay, so number 11 is authority and proof, and that's something I still wasn't able to incorporate in my emails. It was a pretty complicated element for me, to be honest. So how do you incorporate authority into an email?
Well, okay, so this is another one of those things I certainly did not invent. The world's greatest living copywriter, Gary Bencivenga, and by the way, nobody would dispute he's the world's greatest living copywriter today. His success over his 40-year career, he attributed all of his biggest winning ads, and believe me, he's won. I mean, he's like a multi-millionaire just from writing ads that sold a lot of stuff. Was he started using proof in his headlines and throughout his copy, and in emails, it's just as powerful. If you're not like an authority yourself, let's say you're just kind of starting out and all that, that's fine. You can piggyback off other people's experiences. For example, we're talking biz op here, so just kind of related to that industry, I would think would be that author from Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And let's just assume for a second the market knows who he is. It could be anybody. You can talk about him in your email. His secret for X, Y, Z. His method for doing whatever it is you want them to do in the email. You can piggyback off other people's experiences and things like that. So you don't have to be like the expert. I mean, I'm sensing there's probably a lot of newer people listening to this. So don't worry about if you're the expert or not. You can always learn from experts and talk about what you learned from them. And that proof and credibility rubs off on you as a result.
I mean, why do you guys think I'm doing this webinar with Ben, right?
Yeah, well, there you go. And by the way, if I was going to teach list building, I'm not the list building expert. I would probably talk to you. Solo ad.
Yeah,
I'm not the solo ad expert. I would go.
I'll rub some of my credibility off.
I would talk. So yeah, I mean, you just for example, I use one of the emails I've written that did really well is called Dan Kennedy's Depression Proofing Secret, and that's Dan Kennedy in my world, at least to my list. Everyone knows who he is and respects him and all that. So it helps me. Now, I told a story that I learned from him about something I learned from him in the email. It wasn't about me. It was kind of about me because I applied what he taught, but basically it was like his secret. I wasn't saying Ben Settle's depression proofing because that would come off as who cares? And that's a good test to make when you're writing in a subject line. To ask yourself, who cares? I mean, if it's not curiosity provoking enough, it probably will provoke the who cares. But if it's super curiosity provoking, it passes the who cares test. And same with all these other ones. You know your market. And if you don't know your market, make sure you know your market better than anyone else, and you'll never have to worry about that.
Exactly. I mean, what you just said, right now, what you're saying is so profound. I've heard it first by Frank Kern. He said it in his mass control videos. I knew my market. He said, I knew exactly what my market was thinking right now. So that is why, this ad was successful. And it's so profound, and yet so many people miss it. It's just ridiculous. So many people try to sell to this market. We're talking about the business market, but obviously, it can be said about anything. So many people try to sell the market without really understanding what the market or who the market is. There's usually what happens is people sell the wrong things, because the market ends up buying something completely different. So I agree on that part. You really have to know your audience, and it is a bit of an advanced tip, I must say. So use with caution, and only if you feel that only if you really know your market, right? I wouldn't recommend using this if you don't have a full picture of exactly who you're marketing to. So with that said,
I almost recommend not even selling if you don't know your market, because you're just wasting your time. And it's more important to know your market than your product. And I'll give you an example. When I wrote in the first time I wrote a sales letter for the golf niche, I had never even played golf before. I didn't know anything about golf, so I had to learn the market through the people who created the program and all that. And I was able to write the sales letter because the product wasn't even ready. I wrote 90% of the sales letter, everything except the product details, before I even saw the product, because I knew the market so well. And I can write it, put it this way, you know your market when you can sell even a crappy product to your. I'm not saying you should do that ever, but I'm saying if you know your market well enough, you can sell any product to them, and that's how you know the market better. It's like you just know them. You know what they're keeping them up at night and what they're scared of and all that. So anyway, I just want to throw that in there.
No, that's actually a pretty big thing, and I've shared it multiple times with my coaching clients. When I actually went to this seminar last year in London, and the guy, he was a big guru. He's an accomplished fellow, and he said that he showed us a sales letter, and he said, I wrote this without having a product, because I'd figured I write the best damn sales letter I can, and then I'll just pay the product that fits it, right? So I just, yeah. So I think
was
it's
very
a great
common
approach.
too. People used to do that like back in the 60s in the newspaper, like when they were running newspaper ads and stuff. And you can't really do that. It's illegal now to do that, but back in the day they would write the ad first and see if anybody bought, and then they would create the product, because if nobody bought from the ad, why create the product? That was their mindset.
Okay, so guys, this isn't legal, okay? But for the sake of practice, you can just try today and sit down and try to write an email that pre-sales people into the best damn IM product or BizUp or MLM product that they've ever seen. Try that. Try just for the sake of exercising, and you'll see that whether you know the market or not. Can you really write a compelling sales pitch without having a product in front of you? Because if you cannot, well, you suck, my friend, and you got to get back to the basics and learn the market. But if you can, it's safe to say that you're you're good. So moving on to number 12, and this is something that Dan Kennedy talks a lot about. And again, I've been exposed to Dan Kennedy for a while now, and it's seasonal. We call it seasonal, but what you really mean, I assume, is writing and pitching according to the season or the holiday, right, or time of year, right? So we're talking Thanksgiving, New Year's, Halloween, and you got a couple of subject lines here as well that you've shared that are obviously related to these holidays.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do this I don't do it as much as I used to, because I'm not thinking these days about holidays for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm getting older. But I do feel like every Halloween I actually use the same email every year on Halloween, and it's about marketing monsters. And I go through all these like different monsters, like the swipe and steal slime and the Frankenstein, the Frankenstein monster who's like made up of all these different parts. Like a bad sales letter would be like somebody just swipes different parts of sales letters, and creature from the Black Lagoon, and I just went through all the monsters, and that was a seasonal email. I've done that with Christmas. I have like a Grinch one. I talk about the Grinch every Christmas. So definitely, if people are thinking about it, so there's nothing wrong with just writing emails about it during that season.
Okay, and so we're actually getting down to the last one, which is mix and match. So Ben encourages you to pretty much just have fun and mix those up. Curiosity and bizarre. Seasonal with movie characters. So you can pretty much mix and match each and every one of these concepts with each other, right?
Yeah, and a lot of them do overlap of the 13, and so that's good. I mean, the more they overlap and intertwine, the better the subject line is going to be. And you don't have to start out thinking you have to be great at this. Just start out doing what you can. Just the only wrong. Here's my new philosophy on this. The only wrong thing you can do with email is not send one. So, it's better to send a crappy one than to not send one at all, the way I look at it, because you're going to get better the more you do it. So just apply all these subject line principles, and you're going to build that creativity muscle. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get stronger. You're going to get better at it. You're going to stand out from all your competition. In fact, everyone listening to this call is going to start competing with each other, which is good. You want that. You want to get jealous of other people's subject lines. It's going to force you to do a better one. You can only get better. So apply, apply, apply. That's all I can tell you with all this stuff. You have to apply it.
Okay, cool. Now, Ben, here's something that was the true purpose, okay, of getting you onto this webinar, because I couldn't care less about email marketing. The one thing I do want to talk to you about, and now that we've kind of invited you and I hosted you, you have no choice but to actually tell me the secret behind it. How do you go about writing a sales letter without any proof elements whatsoever, yet it comes out in a way where you can't really help but to believe everything you're saying in the letter. And before you answer, I
Yeah.
really want you to know exactly why I'm asking the question. You see, many people
Okay.
attempt to write their first sales letter, they think, and that's like one of the biggest misconceptions, how can I write the letter? How can I sell something if I don't have any proof, if I don't have any evidence, if I haven't been successful myself? And that is especially true to the biz op niche, or to the make money online niche, where people, to sell a product here, you got to show proof of making money. So first, I would like for you to tell us whether this is actually true, whether you do have to show any proof. And second, please share with us. Please share with us how exactly do you write those letters. And I've seen your letters because I bought some of your products. You just don't have any screenshots. You don't have virtually any testimonials. Not video testimonials, that's for sure. And you come across from a position of authority and integrity, and you kind of just don't question what you're writing about.
Okay. Well, a lot of people. Okay. So here's the thing. I don't, and this is, this may or may not apply to your guys or not here, but I think it does if you do things the way I do it at least. Is I don't try to sell to cold people. Like I don't. For example, let's take my newsletter. Okay. I have no screenshot. First of all, I think screenshots are not the way to do it anyway. I don't think they're very good forms of proof, if you want to know the truth. That's just my personal opinion. I also think that you can potentially get in trouble with them sometimes, but depending on what country you live in. Like in America, they're really hard on that kind of stuff. Like you're not supposed to imply all these things. If you need that kind of proof and you can't sell any other way, that means you have a lot of work to do on learning how to sell, and that's fine. Now you know where you're at. But you can tell stories. Absolutely tell stories. If you have no hard data proof, you're just starting out, you just created your own product, it's based on, let's face it, it's based on regurgitating stuff you've just learned from someone else. I'm not saying that's a bad way to do it. Everybody has to start somewhere. Just make sure it's very valuable. Make sure you give credit where credit's due and all that. Just tell stories. And use curiosity to the max. In the dating niche, for example, I use a pen name for that niche for obvious reasons, okay? And so that pen name, I didn't fabricate some story about him. The sales letter selling that product to cold traffic. And this is going to, well, it's not cold traffic, but it's like my email list that came from cold traffic. It's almost pure curiosity. It's all bullets. If you really want to get good at writing emails and sales letters and all this stuff, any kind of persuasive communication, study how to write bullet points, dripping with curiosity and, just so interesting that people, man, I got to have this product even though I don't know who this guy is, but damn it, I want that fake cocaine, whatever it is, You want to use that kind of curiosity in your bullet points. That's how you do it. Honestly, I mentioned Gary Halbert earlier. He used to sell products on newspaper, via newspaper ads, like full-page newspaper ads, and it would be this simple. It would literally be this simple. New research has uncovered a way to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is he's selling. It's published by this, publisher or whatever, and then it would be one short paragraph, 3 sentences, and it would just be all bullets. That's it. The rest of the ad is bullets and a call to action. So if you really, really don't have a story to tell, and you don't have any proof and credibility and all that, then when you create your product, make sure you create it in mind where how can I write really cool bullets for this? Because you're creating the product. You can say whatever you want in it. I mean, you don't want to lie or anything, but you can put any twists or whatever you want and start writing the best bullets you can. And I know that's a whole other call in and of itself, but there's a lot of information out there on how to write bullets, and I would say study that. That's going to make your best subject lines. That's going to help you write the best emails, sales letters, all of it. But that would be my advice on that. I have no credibility in the dating market, Igor, so but we're still selling this thing. So it's all curiosity-ridden bullets.
All right, very cool. And that's, I find this device to be, pretty much worth the price of the admission for this call. And it's just, to me today, it's kind of obvious. And I write all my copy in a blind way, almost never go into the specific features of the product or anything like that. And I, too, am a big believer in tons and tons of bullets on the page because I've been, studying lots of not Gary Halbert, but John Carlton material. And John
he's
obviously used to work, he used to work with Halbert a lot. So I definitely
Yeah.
agree on that. And, I'm just happy we discussed this because so many people are just afraid of writing their copy because supposedly they have no proof element. But as we discover, it's really overrated. It's more and more about the writing that you do. So I guess that's about it. We've talked about the 13 ways to write your emails. Now, guys, if you want to learn more about Ben, you can visit Ben Settle. That's BENSETTLE.com. And Ben, where would our listeners go if they want to purchase your sign up to your monthly newsletter, the email players?
Okay, well, what I recommend doing is, because they don't really know me as well as I'd like them to know me before they buy that, just if you just sign up to my daily free tips at bensettle.com, you'll get the first issue of email players in PDF format. I mean, it's a print newsletter, but obviously I have to deliver it via PDF, via email. It's free. The first issue is free. It's a real hard $97 value, and it has 24 different ways, like we talked about here. It's like 24 ways to like make more money with your emails. Wherever you're at, wherever level you're at, it'll be fine. I've actually had people tell me that just from that free issue, they've made like thousands of dollars in sales, and that's usually what sells them on joining the newsletter because they apply it. So download that for free. All you got to do is sign up for my daily email tips. Download it, read it, and apply those tips inside that, and see if it doesn't make you money. If it makes you money, then you're losing money by not subscribing to more tips, the way I look at it. So then you could check out email players, and there's a link in there for that. But I would actually just prefer they just start trying me out on my free list first and see what they like after that if they want to go farther.
All right, very cool. Now, guys, this is right about the only chance you'll get to ask Ben a question about what we discussed today. Unless, of course, you subscribe to his newsletter, get his product, and become a paid customer, in which case he will happily reply to your emails, probably. But either way, if you have any questions about what we've just talked about, you're encouraged to raise your hand, and I'll give you the microphone so you can ask the question yourself. Or perhaps you want to put it into the chat box, and we'll just see it here, and we'll answer it for you. We'll give you. Oh, we already have a question. Are you ready, Ben? All
Yep.
right. What is his email? I want to whitelist it. What's your email, Ben? What was your email? Because someone, actually Chrissy, she's a longtime client of mine and a business partner, she wants to whitelist it.
She wants my email address?
Yeah, that's what she wants.
Oh, it's Ben at bensettle.com.
All right, Ben at bensettle.com. Yeah, so she's just afraid it will go to the spam box. That's all. Okay. So, folks, anyone else? Any questions about what we talked about today? Writing emails, perhaps a bit of a copywriting element to it as well. So it will directly transform to sales letters as well, not just emails. If you're already mailing your list, maybe you've had some sort of challenge you want to talk to us about, maybe not. So we'll give you, like I said, we'll give you a minute. All right, so we got a question from Michael. Okay, the question from Michael. So if you weave a story into an email, does it have to be true?
That's a very, very good question. Ideally, it should be true, and if it's not true, make sure it's about someone else, not about you. In other words, just say I heard about this guy, or I heard about what happened. You don't really want to lie to people about yourself or anything, but you can say I heard about this story, that happened to this person and this trouble they got into. There's nothing wrong with that because chances are it has happened to someone. And here's another little shortcut for everybody. There are a lot of forums out there, right? A lot of forums where people in your market are bitching and moaning and complaining, or they're helping other people maybe. But let's face it, most forums are just evolve into like people complaining. Well, that's your market right there. They're giving you stories. Well, here's what happened when I did X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying copy and paste those stories, but I'm saying they're giving you stories that you can feed off of in your emails. So you can kind of talk about it. I did hear about this guy who had X, Y, Z problem. This isn't the same niche as BizUp, but I also sell to people who have prostate problems, an ebook in that niche. And I got a lot of great like stories. And in the weight loss niche too, I used to sell in. I would just look at the forums and I say, man, these people are really going, they have some real pain, and I got to know the market better and I got to use their stories. Now, like I said, I didn't copy and paste their stories, but I would just kind of retell them. I heard about this lady who, she has this challenge. Her friends are tagging her overweight pictures on Facebook, and it's, really hurting her feelings. And here's the advice I have for her, that kind of stuff. And you'll find out hot buttons about your market you didn't even know existed if you do that. So they don't have, if you can't tell a true story, you heard about something that happened to someone. I don't advocate like outright lying. And parables are always okay too, of course.
Yeah, that's a pretty good tip. I like that. So moving on to the next one now, Chrissy demands you give her your paid newsletter. So Chrissy, if you want to get the paid newsletter, then once you just go to bensil.com, you sign up to his free stuff, and the first email you'll get is a PDF version of the newsletter for the probably from 2013, and you'll have a link there to sign up to Email Players monthly. So just go to bensil.com to get all the details. Now here's a question from David we got here. It's pretty long, so let me kind of go ahead and read it out loud to you. One question with regards to shock headline. Maybe I'm not clear on something, but should the shock headline be directly related to the content? Is the shock headline done as an afterthought from writing an email about a controversial topic?
The topic doesn't even necessarily have to be controversial to use a subject line. It's just to get attention. As we went through some examples here, they don't all immediately sound like they belong to that market. They could, they might. You want to ideally make sure that you flag down your readers so that they know it's about the subject that you're writing about. But here's the thing, and we didn't discuss this, but it's important to bring this up. When you mail regularly, and I advocate daily, at least 5 days a week, what's far more important than your subject line is the from line. Like, it's from your name. They're going to open it if they like your emails because it's from you, regardless of your subject line. I mean, it really doesn't even matter what you say in some cases. Now, you still want a good subject line. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to be lazy about it, but I'm saying that's far more important, and will let you get away with going off topic sometimes, or it might look like it's not on topic at a glance. It's because it's coming from you. People get my email. I could probably, like I said, the case for anorexia. It has nothing to do with email marketing or anything. But I was able to talk about it anyway because it was from me, and people know what to expect from me. And they will from you, too, when you start doing this. And I don't really recommend coming out with shock effect subject lines right up if you're just starting out. I don't know if the person asking this is just starting out or not, but if they are, wait, don't do them right away. Don't do it you're not doing it just to be crude or anything. You're not I don't advocate like swearing and cussing and all that. It's just shocking them. Like, wow, did this guy just say that? That's like the reaction you want. Seriously, did you just say that? And that's what's going to get people to open the email, and tie it in as fast as you can to whatever it is you want to talk about.
All right. Now, this kind of brings up another question that I have, someone asking here. What about the length of the email? Like, how do you determine what's the perfect, length of an email?
Okay. Well, that is a very good question. It really, there's actually two answers to this. One is, well, I'm not going to give you two. I'm just going to give you one answer to this. As long as it's interesting, it can be 1,000 words long. If it's boring, even 5 words will not work for you. So what's more important than length is being interesting. So if you're in their world, I mentioned Jim Camp earlier. Remember that the greatest negotiator, the world's most feared negotiator. He has this really cool concept where when you're in the other person's world, so when you're in the person's reading your email, when you're in their world, you're safe. You're always safe if you're in their world. So if you're interesting and talking about something that's interesting to them, you're safe. If you're talking about something they couldn't care less about, you're dead in the water. So that's one answer. I'm going to give you the other answer anyway, just because I think it'll simplify it even more. I try to keep and this is just my personal opinion. I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it. It's just the way I do it, because I have a low attention span. Is I like to keep my emails below 300 words. Now, I don't always achieve that goal. A lot of times I'll go 500, 600 words. But my goal is basically to get it down under 300 words for attention span purposes. And here's a really good exercise to do. And I used to do critiques for email player subscribers. I don't do them anymore, but I used to do critiques. And the one thing the one suggestion I had for almost everyone across the board, and this applied to myself too, still does, is however long it is now, whatever it is, it's probably too long. Cut it down at least like 10%. So just do the word count, subtract 10%, and try to get it down to that word count. So that's one way to do it. That's how I would,
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion, though. I'm not saying you can't do longer. Sometimes I go 800 words, but I'm saying overall, I try for under 300 words.
Right. Well, it's kind of like answering this question about, how long the copy needs to be. Usually the right answer is however long it has to be. So if you have to say 1,000 words to make your case, then you say that. Make sure you say it in an interesting way in order to keep, the attention. But the point of it is that you don't have to necessarily limit yourself. But obviously, if you write an email that's more like a manuscript than an email, you're likely getting a bit off the mark there. So that was a very good question. So guys, last call. Any other questions you might have about email marketing or copywriting or the ideas used in email in order to get more people opening and clicking and then buying from your emails? Just quick 10-second window of opportunity for the last question. Probably not. Yeah, I don't see any questions coming in. Okay, so all right. One of our listeners, Michael, actually says that I should tell everyone about Ben's radio show on iTunes. So there you go.
Oh, please do. We definitely appreciate that. Really, I do. I appreciate anyone who listens to it and gives it a review, even if it's a one-star review. As long as it's an honest review, I'm glad. So any exposure is great. Thank you very much.
All right. So just to sum it up, we've discussed 13 ways to write sexy emails to get people reacting, responding, and thinking about what you're writing, as well as jumping onto your stuff. We've talked about some specific avenues of getting people curious or getting people shocked, of playing movie characters and saying bizarre things in your emails that pay off. So if you want to learn more about this sort of writing, you can visit bensettle.com and get a freebie. And from that point forward, Ben's going to take over and he's going to pretty much sell you something every day. And Ben, I sincerely and truly appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, probably going to go off to write some more emails as we get off the phone. Truly appreciate the your quick response and your openness about doing this. And perhaps if you got any last words and wishes for whoever listens to the call.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun, and I was glad to share all this with your listeners and hopefully get to know them a little bit more if they sign up for my tips or whatever. And, again, the only wrong thing you can do is not send in anything. So just start writing an email every day. It doesn't have to be long. It can be 100 words. It really doesn't matter. Just get something out there. Try to talk to your market about something they're interested in. Make them an offer. Just put a link in there and see what happens. And by the way, if you want someone to really kind of, he's no longer with us anymore. He died like last year. But his name was Jim Straw, if you Google him. He sold a lot of the BizOp type stuff, and he got away with doing, his emails are really short and pure sales pitch, and somehow he got away with it. And he might be someone worthy of just studying if you can somehow read his old emails. I'm not sure if you can on his site.
Can you spell his name for us, his last name?
Yeah, his last name is Straw, S-T-R-A-W. Okay,
Jim Straw. Okay,
yeah.
Guys, so anyone who listens to this call right now and you're in the BizOp space, study that guy. And apparently he had some great success in the niche. So you definitely want to model those who are more successful than you are. And so will I once we get off the phone. Alrighty. So again, Ben Settle from bensettle.com. Was a true pleasure. And we'll be in touch. Guys, thank you so much for attending. I know it's been short notice. I've only just emailed everyone this morning because I kind of forgot, let's face it. It's better to do something than just forget about it. But I sincerely appreciate you making the time to come over here and listen to us, rant a little bit about email and all the, things associated with it. Anyway, Ben, I'm going to let you go. Guys,
Okay.
again, thank you for listening, and I'll see everyone a bit later. If you're subscribed to my list, so you'll hear from me sometime later on. And if you're a coaching client, then you're probably going to see me around today. And then I'll be probably harassing you about something in the nearest future. So everyone, thank you again, and have a good week.
Thank you.